Hello, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Submitted for Your Approval, the weekly card review show for Collective, the community-created card game where you make the cards. And we are back, folks. Sort of a long hiatus. I've been processing a lot of stuff with my recent move. And as a result, I haven't really been able to have, internet access. So there's that. I'm joined today by my faithful co-host, Grief.
Howdy, folks.
And a very nice, fancy shirt today. And it's good to have you back. And Empty Folder.
Hello, everyone.
No adjectives for you. Okay, so I want to hop straight into it with the accepted submissions. These are in the game, so you can make decks with these. Starting with the Ink Maid as a 1-drop neutral 1/2 Maid Samurai tune from Maid Noir. With summon, put the bottom unit of your deck on top, give it +1/+0 and Vigilant. This is a lot of value for a little bit of a 1-drop. Great for any sort of deck that likes to be able to consistently draw units in the early game. It's a little bit of early game fixing, but also establishes a nice board presence with that +1/+0 and Vigilant. I think this is actually going to show up in a lot of different decks because of its versatility. I like how it manages to have 3 tribes and not a lot of immediate use between those. I guess the Samurai Vigilant thing works out pretty well. But the rest of it's kind of kooky, and I just really, really like that weird flavor that it's got going on with it. Grief, what do you think of this card?
I mean, I can understand Tune and Maid, but where the Samurai comes from, I don't have a fucking clue. Is this maybe some weird anime reference to the whatever? Yeah, to be honest, neutral 1-drop that also buffs card that's on the bottom of your deck because it's kind of Maid thing to do is pretty cool, considering that there's a pseudo heralding with a specific target that you can manipulate, but for the most part you don't really care. You will just pull any unit up, it gets Vigilant, maybe it has an active on top of it because playing this in active matters would actually be interesting, so you can actually utilize those actives the following turn and still attack and block with a unit. Outside of that, this is just a good unit for 1-drop that you can put 1/1 cost that you can put into any deck.
What do you think of this, Empty?
Yeah, I like this card. So it does have that interesting active synergy, like Grief brought up. But honestly, plus Vigilance a pretty good keyword, and +1/+0 also. The problem with Herald normally is that sometimes you draw into actions and you don't get the value until quite a few turns later. But with this, you're always guaranteed to get it next turn. Of course, the downside is that as long as this is in play, unless you're drawing extra cards, you're just never going to draw an action again. But who knows? Maybe you have an action-heavy deck and there's some units you want to tutor. That this can sort of do that too. Yeah, it's a neat card.
Yeah, that's why I like it, is the ability to kind of stack your. I feel like this is a great, even just as a general purpose aggro tool. Just being able to get something on the board and give it, the ability to attack right away. And the other stuff is just the fixing and the Vigilant seems like what really makes this card shine. I can see a lot of different decks using this. Youthful Slimedrake is a 2-drop spirit 2/1 Ooze Dragon from Saga with Rebound, Ambush, and Entomb. Put a random card from your deck that shares a tribe with this on top. Herald 2. A lot of tutoring shenanigans today, or fixing shenanigans. This is sort of kind of like the opposite of that kind of thing, and so now you get it on an Entomb a little bit later. But this can let you grab potentially useful oozes or useful dragons, even though it's at random. And of course, you have a chance just to use this as a way to grab another Youthful Slimedrake that would now be a 4/3 Rebound Ambusher, which itself is kind of useful, and just use this to grab a bunch of grab that sort of board presence to kind of mid-rangey stall out type thing. Empty, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is sort of like a tech card. It's going to depend on the meta, because this is really good against aggro and mid-range where they're guaranteed to swing into it the turn it comes down. And then like it's a rebound blocker and it gets you Herald 2 twice, which is like kind of insane. But against like control decks and stuff, they're just not going to care about it. They're probably going to let it through for damage quite a few times and not like never swing into it, obviously. I think slimes have a bit of like self-destruction, but I don't know. I'd have to take a look at the list to see if they have enough to make it worth it. If you can't reliably get your opponent to swing into it.
I just want to say that, man, I love Space Turtle doing art. Like, I feel like they don't do enough. Like,
it's really nice.
Every time they release a piece, I'm like, wow, that is just so cool. And this piece is just like, man, I miss this kind of stuff. Grief, what do you think of this?
It's a cool card. You can play it in Giant, maybe use it. It's overall just a neat little beat stick that you can utilize. Okay, turn 1, it drops, you can block a unit. Sorry, turn 2. But afterwards, you just will attack with it, because regardless of what you can actually do with it, it's a 1-drop. It can also die. It's a 1 HP, and it can also die accidentally to some kind of wipe. So, at the end of the day, it will just either cycle into another copy of itself and put itself back into hand. So you don't even need to play the other copy to grab the third copy of it. So overall, you're just getting pretty good value out of it, regardless of if your opponent attacks into it or you just swing with it. Because at the end of the day, this is a 2 damage beat stick that hits anything or just face and does not get its innate value out of it.
And the Codeblock Propedit is a 1-drop strength 1/2 software dragon golem from Uplink with active changing units cost by +1 or -1. So this, I mean, there's probably something I'm almost certainly missing with this, but like, why? Because wouldn't this only change the cost of units in play?
Yeah, exactly.
Grief, what do you think of this card?
This screams 2 things. Shift support, but that's not what code blocks are made for, and Baldwin / martial promotion, because code blocks were basically designed around Baldwin in the first place, because he has a martial promotion active ability. I don't know. I don't remember if it's already in the game or it was supposed to be in the next hero updates. Either or. And you can basically play them as martial promotion targets. Other code blocks also care about cost and switching into different cost ranges. So this is just, martial promotion support.
Well, yeah, because this doesn't work with shift, because shift is on base cost, right? So this is very much a scalpel. It's got like one particular like goal in mind. Empty, did you see anything else with this, or why did you pick this card today?
I just think so. I have sort of mixed feelings on the whole Codeblock package. I think some people don't really get the design direction all that much. So we have some like really weird Codeblock cards that don't really fit with the rest of them. But like this one in particular, I just really like, because it's a really cool, like it's a really interesting way to think about using the package, where you have like specific costs that you want to be hitting on like specific turns with your code blocks, and you can use this to tweak it a little bit in either direction depending on what card you want to get. And if you structure your deck in the right way, you have this sort of toolbox then where like, okay, I have X card at each cost, which one do I need in this situation? And like I always used to build KM decks that had that sort of thing with like you would switch your affinity to change the costs, and those, like, that's always so much fun. It's so many things to think about when you're doing these martial promotion effects. So I just really like the card for that aspect.
Interesting. Definitely gives you something to think about. Okie dokie then. So we're going to talk about these are active submissions. You can vote on these cards, and if enough people vote on them, they'll get in the game. Starting with the Faux Fortune, which is a 2-drop neutral 0/3 Fox object from nowhere in particular. With active, each player draws a card, and active, each player creates a coin. Nice little bit of work by Stable Diffusion, which is yet another art bot. Collective 2023 prediction. It's just going to be AI art, guys. No, seriously though. Very, very, very cute little art. Very, very cute little effects. For those of you who don't know, I am a big fan of Group Hug in Commander in Magic. And even though that it always has a very different kind of dynamic when you're talking about a 1v1 match, this still gives me that vibe, and that still makes me happy. Especially because this game has so much stuff to turn this into more of a sort of like a Staxy type thing. Each player draws a card. There's a couple cards out there that can punish drawing in interesting ways. All of the ing mages, your binding, grinding, finding, whatever. Or you also have the coin route, where you can potentially increase the cost of tokens in your opponent's hand, which can make that into garbage. So that's really fun. And so I feel like there's a lot of synergies in like older formats. I don't really know much in like current stuff, so I'll let Empty talk on this. What do you think of this?
I don't think there's all that much in current stuff either. Actually, it's not really a deck right now, but if like a Jinx deck becomes a thing, this could be really cool in there, because you're like doubling your opponent's draw, and we have like very few forced draw effects in Standard, so you'd probably like have to run it. I don't know. I don't see too many uses outside of that. Of course, you could always just like roll this and just do the coin mode and hope that you can make a better use of it. Like if you're running a Luciforge deck, because Luciforge just tends to be better than anything your opponent can do if you get it out like turn 5 or so. But other than that, I don't think there's that much synergy for this in Standard. It's a cool design though.
Definitely, and I think it's definitely something that there's a lot of different. It has that versatility in older formats that I think will still encourage people to like maybe build new tools to work with it. Grief, what do you think of this?
Interesting card. Works very weirdly in our game. Considering that, yeah, your opponent has immediate access to that mana / to that card in the same turn as you do. The card has an active or two actives that are delayed. So you have to basically choose the mode that you want to utilize, which is fine and all, but overall the card does technically nothing besides being a very weird howling mine. It's a cool design, and I view this on a different kind of lens, considering some other aspects that I cannot really talk about. But this is a cool card in a collection to have, because maybe there will be something for it in the future.
Well, but Grief, you bring up an interesting thing about how this doesn't, or how this works weirdly with initiative, right? But I'd actually argue the opposite, that the way it works squirrely with initiative can actually lend itself to some sort of like mind game stuff.
Sorry, not initiative, turn structure.
Oh, turn structure. Because there's some stuff where you might just want to like, oh, I'm going to throw my opponent a coin. They're going to pop that coin, drop something big, and then I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I'm now the off initiative player to do something neat, or to destroy it, or to do something cool with that, you know?
Oh yeah, under the pretense of soft passing, which is a legitimate way of actually utilizing actives that kind of have a utilitarian purpose in the game, where you don't want to hard pass because you don't want your opponent to end the main phase to go straight into combat. Therefore, utilitarian actives are pretty useful. No, what I actually meant was more the turn structure of parallel turns altogether, where these kinds of group hog-esque effects are in a very awkward spot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think leveraging it for a soft pass is actually pretty interesting, and that alone makes this gives this card a lot of potential for people who want to be creative with it. So overall, just great design. Really, 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 really like it. The Emissary of Extinction is a 9-drop neutral 9/11 elemental fish horror from Gemmel. With summon, choose up to 3 units in your opponent's hand to put into play. This duels them in a random order. I think this is very weird, very awkward, and kind of matchup dependent, but I'm still really, really interested in this card. So, like, you're looking at your opponent's hand, you get hand information. I suppose you could just not choose units. So it's interesting because like the one problem I was anticipating with this, like, oh, what if your opponent has a bunch of like really, really strong things in there? You just choose not to put them into play. So this can't ever really like accidentally screw you over, but at the same time, this is a pretty potent discard effect even at 9, I think. I don't really know. Grief, what do you think of this?
It's weird hand disruption removal, because it's a 9 cost that kind of says, okay, if you have 3 units on your hand, I'll pseudo discard them, which is cool and all for a control top end versus a control mirror or whatever, or control mid-range-esque adjacent deck. And maybe there's even a way to drop this thing sooner, but overall, besides the hand information part, this is okay. Like, I mean, as a, there's like, okay, this is the case where, okay, you have 3 units, I discard pseudo discard every one of them, I'll destroy them, maybe even trigger some weird kill triggers on my board, whatever, but I doubt it, and probably keep a 9 attack beatstick, because I, dependent on the matchup, basically got rid of either effective or pretty small utilitarian units. Yeah, it's in a weird spot.
Yeah, it's quirky, but I like it for it being quirky. MD, what do you think of this?
Yeah, it's just, it plays, I think it's going to play really weird. Like in a lot of decks, I mean, I guess against a lot of decks, this just doesn't really do much. Like against these hard control decks where like they run a bunch of actions and not very many units. I mean, maybe you get one, they're like one big bomb and get rid of that. But you're not, you also just played like a 9-mana vanilla unit that did very minor hand sculpting. So it's not very good there. And then against like aggro, they're just not going to have a hand when you get this out, unless you like super ramp it somehow. So it needs a very specific deck to be good, and I think that's what's going to hold it back.
Yeah. Still definitely interesting design, but yeah, I do agree with a lot of what you guys are saying, where it's kind of hard to figure out what to do with it. To bring an end to order is a 4-drop Strength Ambition from Gemmel with deal 4 damage randomly split among enemies. And the plan is banish and play the top card of your deck if it costs 2 or less. Sorry. Plan is a new keyword that Acoustic's been fiddling around with. Well, it's a hook word more properly, where you get an effect for the at the start of the turn for the rest of the game, but the next plan you play overwrites the old one. Plan is sort of an interesting effect. I mean, it's got that little built-in thing where you switch out your plan, which will so you can't gain too much value out of these, despite the fact that they're start of the game effect. I think the mechanism is really, really interesting, and so I definitely wanted to highlight it. As far as the card itself, it's a 4-drop card that wants to encourage you to be playing a lot of 2-drops and chars, which in and of itself, I guess if you're running the Gemmel deck, that's good, but I think it's a little awkward for anything else in strength, so I wonder if this is maybe a little bit too niche, but I don't know. I can't think of all the different builds you could do with it. I definitely do think it can be versatile. I just don't know deck lists, what this would look like off the top of my head. And that, I think, is the only thing that's really holding me back on it. Otherwise, I really, really like it. I really think Plan's an interesting mechanism. MT, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's fine that it has like a very specific home. It's just, I think it's a bit too strong, and it's like, it's really awkward because so there's like 2 plans on the sub right now. And both of them are like very obviously have a home in the char deck. The problem is they're like parasitic against each other. Like you don't want 2 plans for the same deck. And out of those 2, I think the other one is better designed because this one, it gets you like a ton of value for a pretty low cost, and like your opponent can't interact with it in any way once you bring this out. Like 4 mana for 4 damage randomly split isn't that bad to begin with. And then like getting free stuff every turn potentially, especially since Gimel has like scouring and stuff, so you can make sure you hit it. It's kind of too much.
I think this one is the more interesting one because it being banished to play the top card of your deck, if it costs 2 less, it has more potential for it to find another thing it belongs in. But yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying, and I personally think like I think the hook word has a lot of potential, but for bringing it into order, I do think it might be a bit too powerful, and I'm not sure if the 2 designs we've seen up are realizing all of that potential. Grief, what do you think of this?
I mean, this is Incendium stapled on top of a utility card, or basically card advantage card for burn aggro with a very low curve. Because you're always banishing and playing the top card of your deck, meaning that if it's stuff like an aggro agile unit for 2, or burn red burns for 2, which is gonna also be something neutral, whatever, as long as it's in the cost range of it, you can basically play it for free while also drawing a card for turn. So sure, it is counterintuitive if you utilize it with anything that costs more than 2. Because you're losing the card advantage out of it. But aside of that, I don't really see any real downside to it. Depending on Gamel, this can also help you out for certain self-banish effects, but whatever. I don't really have an opinion of the card. I like the mechanic of plan, but this is for me like a nothing. For me, this is a nothing burger, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of seeing it. I feel like this is close, but I just don't know if this is it. But I really do like the design, and so I wanted to highlight it. The Dice Collection is a 4-drop mine 3/4 action from nothing from Degenesis. With summon, get a card from your deck equal to your max mana. So I have never seen 32 mana, so I'm gonna assume this is a new or newer designer. First off, thank you for it's nice to see you on here and submitting cards. We wanted to give you a little bit of advice that's just kind of like standard stuff we tend to say to newer players. People care about some of the like minor things like capitalizing names on cards. And the other thing I noticed is that this is a rare. You want to put something in the smallest rarity you can, because there's a restriction on which rarities can get into the game. So we can only get so many rares, so many uncommons, so many commons a week. So you're hurting your chances by taking a card with a small box and putting it on a rare. Besides that, I mean, I'm down for tutors. Like, I think this is an interesting design. If you just cleaned up the grammar and switched this to a common, I would upvote it because I like stuff like this. But I know that this can be a contentious issue with a lot of people. So I don't necessarily know if this feels Degenesis really, but I mean, it's close enough. It's got that sort of weird, like, surrealist looking thing. It'd be cool if it had like a Nightmare and Tribe or something like that. Grief, what do you think of this?
On terms of flavor, I'm ignoring flavor because I just care about the design. Because as you already rightfully mentioned, it is a new card creator who also, I think, only a week or 2 ago joined the server. So overall, this is just for feedback. As you already pointed out, rarity is an issue. Text box is kind of an issue in terms of the name. But overall, for the card, I think it's a fine design. 4 mana, 3/4, yeah, it's a little bit on the curve, but it is just a very well differently flavored play one, draw one. It's a self-cantripping unit, and the range that it can actually utilize your cantrips is interesting because it can technically grab you anything, depending on the deck you're playing it and the curve you're running. At later stages of the game, this is kind of a dead draw, except for if you just so happen to have like a card for every max mana curve. On the other hand, this is like also a very cute thing that you can consider in pseudo singleton decks where, okay, cool. If there's some more support for this kind of archetype, you can always fetch something that is that you can play in the following turn while also floating 1 mana extra, which is also fine. To keep it short, it's a cool first or second issue design. I think they actually reposted it because they actually had made a mistake. So yeah, overall, very neat showing, but there are some minor things that can be adjusted or improved upon.
Yeah, I think if you just like clean up the grammar on this and just like nightmare or nightmare artifact, or find something flavorful for that, and cut down the text box, I think this card would actually really sparkle with a certain group. I mean, there's some people who don't like tutor-like effects, but I personally...
I'll be right back.
Okay, Empty, what do you think of this?
Yeah, I agree with Grief. I think there's like nothing really wrong with the design here. It's a good design. It really just needs some cleaning up along the tribe line and the text a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Moving on, the Scion of the Sea is a 7-drop mine, 7/6 elemental snakefish horror. Can we have any more tribes? With ward, overrun, and before combat, choose an ally and enemy unit to bounce and set their cost to 1. So, really potentially interesting thing here. First of all, that bounce is like continual. So you're going to be able to use this as a little bit of a creative board control, even with a 1 cost. Now me, and this is just the kind of card game player I am, I look at this and I'm like, oh, I remember like Solar Snack and stuff from when I first started playing, and I'm like, how am I going to use this to re-trigger some summons? So my thoughts is like, you put the thing back down, the cost change persists until it hits the graveyard. So what you do at that point is you run this with Guitar Axe, and so you can play the thing back down, then Guitar Axe it. Now, no matter what cost that summon had, it'll now trigger twice. So you can use this to take it as summon and basically just trigger it out into infinity. Empty, what do you think about this?
Yeah, the other synergy that comes to mind is you can run this with Sated Processionary, and then your opponent can't play the card anymore. And you just pick a 1-drop for yourself, so you get to play it again. But then theirs is discounted, and they can't play it.
That is mean.
Yeah, a lot meaner than your combo of the Guitar Axe with Summon Richard, right? But yeah, there is some neat synergy to go along with this. It is pretty costly though. It'll kind of just be up to sort of the decks that want to play it, whether or not they can make it happen. Because I know there is actually a bounce deck in standard right now. It just doesn't have very many cards. It's like the circus one. I think it's from actually from Parthian, with like it has the tents and the performers and stuff. So that could be a really cool home for this as well, because that already does a lot of bouncing stuff.
Yeah, the Sated Processionary combo is gross. Yeah, you're right. It is a matter of like being able to get this thing back out, which is a little tricky, but once you do, I think that the jank factor is enough to make me want to upvote this card and be really, really interested in it. Grief, what do you think of this?
Well, I mean, this is just Veiled Model 2.0 and it's blue. But with a less of a control aspect. The thing is like, okay, cool, you can bounce your opponent's card and your own and kind of get a benefit out of replaying cards. You can also kind of just bounce second Scion. Like, okay, you play the first Scion on turn 7 or 6, depending on your ramp. Bounce anything else, played your second Scion, played the other card that you had at 1 cost as your opponent, and just basically bounce each and every Scion depending on a play pattern, so your opponent cannot really interact with the second one. That's funny. On top of that, it's actually a very interesting top-end mid-range unit that you can utilize as well. So overall, I just like the design direction of it. It has combo potential. It is a weird control tool, and there's certainly some options that can open up for you in terms of design that can lean into it.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna go through and upvote that one. I've been kind of negligent on some of my Reddit duty, but this is a cool card. Basic Math is a 1-drop spirit math from nowhere in particular with give a unit gets -2 attack and draw a card.
They're doing math. They don't have to actually be good at writing and vice versa.
Yeah. It's kind of like you said with the other thing. It's kind of a nothing burger. You get a little bit of it cantrips, and it's a little bit in a -2 to attack. Flavor wise, a little bit. I don't know. I guess this is this to pump the DC numbers? I'm guessing. Yeah. This seems like a design that was made for the sake of the DC. It doesn't have the I know Tostalmo was originally trying to do the arrhythmia thing, but I guess that they gave up on that. It's a neat little alternative to the old Swiatlo card that did the puff, but it also but the card advantage you get is in the form of a draw, which matters for a lot of decks. I think on the actual design, it's fine. It's a nice little 1-drop, but on the flavor point, it's just kind of lackluster. There's nothing that particularly sings for me. Last track, who goes first? It should be Grief. What do you think of this?
At the end of the day, it's just a control-ish kind of cantrip. Cool. You're just basically using it versus aggro or certain other duelists, and that's it. And draw a card out of it. So, well, cool. Not really removal, just a form of interaction and quote-unquote a deck thinner. You can technically hit your own units with it, but I don't know why you would do so. Maybe for some weird niche shenanigans interactions that matters and that cares about attack values matters, but that's pretty reaching in terms of synergy.
I have a 3-attack unit I want to put in my 1-attack matters deck.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm gonna splash this.
That's why you're playing a spirit card that costs you 2 mana in that case. But yeah, it's cute, it's simple. I like a lot of Tostalmo's recent editions, so I kind of thought, okay, cool, I still have to pick something for the DC. Let's pick this one, even though I really like the Hammer Mages.
Yeah, Tostalmo is a vibe. Like I definitely, his whole approach to designing things definitely, it makes me smile sometimes. You get the shady coconut tree and all the other stuff. People normally I'm a lot more hyped on Tostalmo flavor, which is why the only reason this card makes me sad.
Come on, it's simple.
It's a DC
effect.
Yeah, it's a DC fodder thing, but it's a nice simple effect. Mechanically, like I said, I like this card a lot. Empty, what do you think of this?
I mean, it's fine. The only thing, other than the obvious wording problem, Why is there a plus shield in the art when it doesn't give any health?
It's a
No,
card.
that's a card.
Oh, it's the card.
It's the card.
It makes so much more sense now. I thought that was a shield.
I actually thought that at first too. I will snap to your defense on that. It took me a moment because I'm used to thinking if you see the swords, you see the shield, but no.
Yeah, honestly, I did as well.
I had to read the effect and I was like, oh, it's a card.
Like I was like, okay, where's the defense buff in this card? Wait a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool card.
I'm just gonna go with the Frenchy the Frenchest way I can think of to pronounce this as Uwe, Heart of the Swamps. Is a 9-drop spirit, 9/18 Titan with summon. Put into play up to 9, cost 8 or less, place units from the deck as 0/10s. Ready them, enemy units use flying and unblockable. So yeah, just board glue. This is here to make sure nobody gets to move for a little bit, and unblockable units are blockable again, and gum up the board as much as humanly possible. This also, if we ever build a place worth putting down, lets you get it straight out into play with a nice buff to it. Obviously, hard removal is kind of the bane of this kind of effect, and anything you do after it, you can still build evasion, but very, very interesting sort of mid-range thing if you can get it out, but it's kind of expensive. Empty, what do you think of this?
Yeah, so the idea, like having another place synergy card after, man, I don't even know how long it was ago, but basically trying to do place synergy again, I like that idea. Like we had our old place synergy deck with Wake the World, and it was just absolutely terrible.
Yes.
So yeah, I like the idea of retreading again, maybe trying to make it a bit better and more interesting. The problem I kind of have with this is it's not really like it's not encouraging you to play places like before you play this. Basically, you want to have the places in your deck and then not draw them or play them, because this is most effective on like an empty board. And if there's like any place synergy at all, getting like 9 places into play as O10s, like there's a way you can leverage that to win the game. Like I think there was some, I'm not sure if it got in, but there was like ones where it was like you could do an units active to like mill equal to the card's health. So that would just be like an instant win. Like there's definitely combos you can do with a board that's that tanky to leverage this into a win. I just think the play pattern isn't quite there. Like I think it's going to lead to some uninteresting games if it gets in like this.
Yeah, I do know Block originally, when I was looking at this, it gave all of them start a turn, your opponent banishes the top 3 cards of their deck or something like that, and was talked out of it by VC. And I thought that was a tragedy because I thought it put it, well, I didn't know if it should have been that effective in particular because I also had some concerns about that, but it adding some sort of clock to the game, I think fit more of the like the mid-range-ier control-y kind of narrative, but
I like that idea too.
As if this is just board glue.
Yeah, I think toning down how many places it gets in, because I mean, as is, this is over 100 stats worth of health that your opponent has to get through. But then like adding back in that sort of mill effect or some other effect to your places, maybe you get like 2 or 3 places and then add that effect. So you're encouraged to actually build a board before you drop this. Because at like, yeah, the base idea of doing place synergy is really cool. And like tutoring up a few places as O10s is a good idea too. It's just like, it needs a little bit more. And I think that effect needs to have a bit less health because it's kind of a ridiculous wall.
Wait, okay. I'm gonna pitch something just for the sake of pitching something. Make this a jinx card and make your places jinx like 3 cards in the opponent's deck. Because then it's really a swamp, right? If you have it like polluting your opponent, I don't know. Throwing something out there. Grief, what do you think of this?
The HP value is pretty ridiculous, and I don't understand why it has 18 HP, because it actually does not serve any purpose at all. The place synergy of putting stuff onto places, I don't really care too much about, because you're pulling up to 9 places anyway. At this point, you don't really need extra effects on those places. It would probably be more interesting to have other places synergize with cards in weird ways, because at this point, you will try to build your own toolbox. And yeah, this has some weird connotations to be water shapers ore on a stick, or weird water shapers ore on a stick, where you play similar, you have the same play pattern, in hoping not to draw the cards you want to pull out as your targets. So it makes sense to kind of play 2 offs or 3 offs of specific places that you definitely want to pull out with it, but can also utilize during the turns leading up to U. The problem with this card is more or less that, okay, cool. This wants to be a place deck top end, but what places go in? Because places are kind of all over the place. Pun not intended. Pun not intended. Where they don't really synergize with each other, and those that do it in very quirky ways. And some of them don't really have actives that benefit from being readied. The only benefit from readying them is to have them as ambush blockers, pseudo ambush blockers. Why is that important? Because of the very important line following afterwards, because that's a passive, if I'm correct. Enemies lose sorry, not a passive, because that's a blanket effect that negates flying and unblockable to force your opponent to run into the places. Which is cool to have on this top end. The problem is like what goes into the deck.
Yeah. I think this is one of the Pulapka's attempts to encourage people to make cards for this. But I mean, as is, this is sitting at bad, so I don't really know. I want this to do well. I like the idea of a places deck. I just don't know what that looks like.
To be honest, just cut down the HP value, and I probably am more up for it. I think I upvoted it, but as I said, the HP value looks just ridiculous.
The Jarred Surge is a 2-drop strength 3/3 surge from Mortstall, Realm of the Dead Things. With can't attack, can't block, and rage, deal 1 damage to any target. So what you do is you find a way to deal 1 damage to this, and then you have it kill itself. You just have it keep damaging itself until it dies. No, yeah, so this is a little quirky. I know Cornmeal wanted to do these surges as cool units with can't attack and can't block, and I don't know if Corn delivered on the first part. I want to say that this could do something cool. I just don't personally. Honestly, I feel like the rage number should be bumped. Can't attack and can't block are real drawbacks with a rage effect. And so, like, it saying deal 2 damage to any target would actually make this go from boring to exciting for me. But as is, I think it's a little meh. But maybe I'm wrong, which is why we have a panelist of 3 people instead of this being Stranger is wrong about things to show. Grief, what do you think of this? No.
My grandma's called me. I'll be right.
Okay. Right. Empty, you get to go again twice in a row. I hope you feel special.
All right. Yeah, so I think the way to think about this card is like it's just straight synergy for the Rage quest deck. Like, you brought up that situation of it dealing damage to itself to kill itself jokingly, but no, that's actually what you do with this card, because then you get like 3 or 4 procs for your quest. More if you can like get this some extra HP somehow. And then when you actually get your quest off, you can turn this card into like a combo kill, because once you have your like big rage vessel with all the rage effects, as soon as anything pings at once, you can just have it ping itself all the way down to like 0 HP and trigger all your other rage effects like 8 times. And if you have like a few of the ones that deal damage to your opponent, which there's quite a few of them out there, like that can immediately be an OTK.
Okay. I am glad for lore purposes that Corn has conveniently explained to me what the Surge tribe refers to in the flavor
Can you
text
tell
for the
me?
Surge. What?
Let's see.
Oh yeah, let's not talk about
that
the
is what a
one.
surge is.
I
I didn't read the flavor text.
Yeah.
I thought
He
you had
explains
asked
what a
for it.
surge is, if you were curious.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, interesting. I see it now. I guess I'm stalling for time. Give Grief a little bit to come back. To come back. Art-wise, I feel like this is supposed to be like a Rorschach block kind of thing because I see like a dude in there, and I don't know if I'm supposed to see that dude in there, and I don't know. It's looking at me menacingly. Grief. Sorry, we were burning time. What do you think of this design?
I'm very unexcited.
Well, Empty was bringing up how you can use this for the Rage quest, how you can actually have it kill itself, right? And just proc Rage a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, I know. The thing is, like, I'm very unexcited about a 2/3 2-mana 3/3 that can't attack and can't block and doesn't really utilize it in a very interesting way because of self synergy, or relies heavily on an outside trigger to the point where why should I use a card that needs to synergize with cards when I have a plethora of rage support cards and other pretty aggressive units or whatever that innately already do something similar to this, while also being effective cards on the board.
Okay, you make a good point.
Yeah, nothing against the kind of design to try to explore stuff with can't attack and can't block, but I think Rage isn't it, especially with a very, very not polluted, but saturated pool of cards for that archetype.
A little bit of a fun thing with this card is I initially misread the name as Jared Surge, and I'm guessing that the figure in that art is Jared Surge. No, it's Jared Surge now. Okie dokie then. Reading time. The Imp
Most
of
of it is Starship stuff.
Yeah. I know, I'm gonna read the whole card. The Imp of Hustling is
I'll
a
do
4-drop mine 4/3 demon gambler from Wonderstar Casino. With summon, modify your star chips, would choose another star chip choice after this resolves. Create a chip. Modify is permanently change the abilities, stats, etc. of all your copies of a card, including newly created copies. Star chip is star chip, and then we all know what the effects of the star chip are. So yeah, this modify thing, it's really, really hard to just talk about or evaluate this kind of thing. I don't feel like I personally like it. Because there was the other one where it was just the wording was just really, really awkward to read. And then this one, I feel like if you can find a way to get that off, even like one more time, like this can be pretty gross, especially since it affects newly created ones as well. But yeah, I'd be really eager to hear what the panelists have to think about this. Starting with Empty, what do you think of this?
Okay, so I like modify style effects, like these rest of the game things. I think the only other one we have is Necrod Commander. So I like that idea. I think modify reads really poorly. And frankly, I don't think it needs to be a keyword. It's like really specific, and it doesn't save that much room rather than just saying this game, which implies pretty much the same thing. The other problem with this card is that the way it benefits your star chips just like doesn't synergize with the chip package, because like a decent chunk of the chip cards are like synergizing with discarding the chips or like force playing them. Well, force play might work, but the discard definitely isn't going to. And that's kind of an issue for an effect like this. The other thing is that like it's just really awkward to like have an additional choose window on every single chip that you play, that's going to take up like a ton of time. How I would change this card is let you pick 2 options instead of 1. Because it would also like decrease the power level a bit, because it's kind of ridiculous if you just choose damage twice every time, and then play like 3 or 4 chips and just like wipe out your opponent's board the turn after you play this. So I think it needs a lot of tweaking. But like the idea of adding an extra effect onto your star chips is really cool. So I think there's a lot of potential there.
Grief, what do you think of this?
Yeah, in terms of choose windows, this is kind of obnoxious, especially if you play multiple of these.
Yeah.
In terms of power level alone, please don't freaking manipulate star chips even further. They are already pivoting on being pretty complex in terms of their usage, and basically for giving your opponent multiple choices of, oh yeah, let's just try as empty. Already pointed out, play 1 or 2 of these. Afterwards, all my star chips just basically burn for 6 damage. Split between 3 targets, depending if the 3 targets even exist.
I just realized you can use Guitar Axe on this.
Oh yeah, you can re-trigger summons, by the way. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, no, this should at most be at least a passive ability that allows you to choose an extra option. So it is kind of capped at 2. So, or that you can choose twice, so it doesn't actually be, so it doesn't actually become more obnoxious in terms of, oh yeah, I've played 3 of these or multi. Triggered my summons. Now I'm playing 1 starship and burn you for 12 damage.
And it takes like 30 seconds to do it.
Exactly. I also don't really realize the necessity of the modify hook word, keyword, whatever, to the point where, yeah, you can just realize something similar with this gets or until end of turn or whatever.
Well, it would be this game. Empty was right on the wording.
Until the end of the game, yeah, this game. Like, you don't have to put unnecessary permutations on card that are hard to track over the course of the game.
Yeah.
Cool in concept, awkward in practice.
Yeah. So that was the week. A lot of really, really interesting and cool designs there. It's nice to be back. It's nice to have you guys back. Thank you very much for joining us, Grief.
It's always nice to be here. So let's not just go on another month-long hiatus.
Yeah. And I hope your grandma feels better soon. And Empty, thank you for joining us as always.
Yeah, it's really good to be back.
I gotta get you some new posters or something. We'll work on it.
I like the ones I have.
No, well, you just need more. I just the whole wall covered. Like, I don't know. It just needs more color maybe, because you got like those big like.
Yeah, I do got a lot of black and white ones. There's bullets.
Yeah. We need like some splash of color there.
Maybe Empty is the cause of us getting sponsored by Faceplate or not by Displate. We can get
We'll workshop it. Like, comment, and subscribe. Remind us why we keep doing this, and keep on playing collective and keep on voting on cards. Bye.
See ya.